Welcome into the Fantasy Guides podcast. My name is Andrew Teuscher, and I am joined today by the owner, the operator of Fantasy Guides, fantasyguides.com, and the Fantasy Guides Instagram page, and the maker of our great Fantasy Guides guide, Fantasy Guides Guide, Draft Guide, Stephen Rippey, as well as current fantasy football or college football sicko and former college football player. I'm joined by these guys for the second time today because, I forgot to hit record right off the bat. And so we were talking for about 15 minutes, but oh well. Jesse, how you doing so far today?
I'm doing good. You just got a little practice round in right before we hit that record button. So luckily we only got through like the intro, and Andrew, I'll tell you, as the, we've kind of elevated Andrew to the host. I used to do that. I did the same thing more than once. So don't take it too hard. And I'm doing good. I'm about over baseball. Just when your kid starts playing baseball like 3 times a week, you're just like, okay, I'm ready for this season to be done. So, and we lost in the playoffs, but it's still elimination. So we're still going. But yeah, I am ready to talk some football.
Steven, how about yourself?
I'm good, man. I'm still, draft guide's done, but I keep running into kinks, and I can't call anybody to fix these kinks. So it's just me kind of doing this move, like, when you like just kind of do that swear under your breath. It's me doing a lot of that right now, fixing little glitches that I keep finding. But no, I'm good. We're kind of the slow part of the NFL season, so it's probably a good time to have some of these glitches.
Yeah, just get those groans and grunts to get you through. It's like you're playing tennis out there. You just gotta get that energy out there somehow. And as long as it's not a fist going through the monitor, it's a good day.
Which, by the way, have we talked about that? Have you guys seen King Richard?
No.
Okay, you got to watch it, Andrew.
Jesse, the Will Smith movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good movie. I mean, it was really interesting, and it's yeah. Why are you bringing that up? Are you calling me King Richard?
He just brought up he just brought up tennis. He just said you make him
runs
like tennis.
I was like, dude, I got my kid in like the lowest little league that he can be in. I'm not King Richarding my kid yet, am I?
No, it kind of felt like it a little bit though. Your kid's pretty good at sports. You might give you've seen the movie though, but it was a great movie. I had to say, I just saw it recently, so I thought I'd bring it up. Go watch it, people.
I possess no culture, but you know what can make you a king is if you go and you pick up a draft guide whenever you use promo code GUIDES on Underdog. Use promo code GUIDES, GUIDES. Get yourself a draft guide subscription for free, as well as a deposit bonus on Underdog. That makes me feel like a king. Getting free things for just typing in some silly stuff, guides. And remind yourselves, go on there on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you are, like, subscribe, get the noise out there so people know how lovely this podcast is. And speaking of this podcast, today we're going to be going through a few segments. We're going to start with the news or noise. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there at training camp. We talk about it all of the time. And we're going to decide, is some of this stuff really news? It's going to impact fantasy, or is it noise? We'll start there. But then after that, Stephen had a phenomenal post, a great post. And he normally runs these posts by us. And like, we'll see it. It'll like text me like, hey, how does this look? And I'll tell him, oh, it's awesome. Or Steven, you spelled 17 words wrong. Let's try again, buddy. But this one whizzed by me. And we're just going to say it's a fantasy cheat code. And you're going to have to get to that part of the video or of the podcast later. And then we're going to finish off with another great segment you can never go wrong with. Just some Dynasty Buys in this slow offseason. Really good time to capitalize on a lot of stuff as we see things shift around. And some news that might be shifting around some fantasy values is in our news or noise section is we had a bunch of contract extensions. I'm going to list off 4 contract extensions that were some huge, some in between, but definitely I think some big names that everyone knows. Firstly, Justin Jefferson got himself a contract extension, 4 years, $140 million, the biggest non-quarterback contract of all time. And then also Christian McCaffrey, another phenomenal non-QB offensive player, got a 2-year, $38 million contract in the year of our Lord 2024 when running backs don't matter. And then Nico Collins got himself a contract extension, 3 years, $72 million. Jalen Waddle got a contract extension, 3 years, $84 million. Stephen, I'll start with you this time. Which of these contract extensions do you think is the most fantasy relevant in your opinion?
I think it's Nico Collins. I think the other ones, I wasn't surprised. I didn't think any of these other players were going to not get signed or re-signed. But Nico Collins, I think I still had a little bit of question marks because he just had the 1 year. was just this last year that he proved it. And I could have also seen, like, I don't know, they could have franchise tagged him or something and saw if he could do it again. So the fact that he's locked to CJ Stroud for another 3 seasons as a dynasty owner, if I have him, I'm ecstatic. If I don't have him, like in our league, I don't have him, I'm like, well, he's hard to. I'm not even trying to trade for him at this point. I feel like he's kind of locked up. So, Stephon Diggs, he'll be gone, I think, after this season. So he's in good hands. So I think that's the most relevant one.
I definitely think it set Nico apart because, like you said, he had 1 year left, and Stephon Diggs was also on a 1 year deal. So it's like, it really sets him apart of this is a long-term asset, whereas Stephon Diggs might be a more short-term asset. Jesse, what about yourself? Which one of these contract extensions stands out to you?
I mean, I agree with Steven about with everything he said, but for me, I'm a Christian McCaffrey dynasty owner, so I was very excited to see them adding years on to this whole thing going on in San Fran because it's very exciting to be an owner and be watching it, and it makes fantasy football fun. So I already told Steven I am never trading Christian McCaffrey. I don't care when the whatever the window is where I'm supposed to deal him because he's too old. I'm not doing it. I'm just keeping him forever because he's too much fun to watch. And then, yeah, the Justin Jefferson thing is just, it's pretty cool to see that guy get paid. I think that he fully deserves it. I think that he puts fans in the seats in Minnesota, and I think that he crushes it in fantasy. So good for him. So that one did stand out just because of the sheer amount too.
Yeah, make sure you throw a birthday party for Christian McCaffrey. He's going to be turning 28 in 3 days. I just looked. So June 7th, everyone of Christian McCaffrey Day.
Jesse, one thing too about McCaffrey that maybe a lot of people don't realize is there's like this Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch connection with the McCaffreys, because Ed played for Mike Shanahan. He knew Kyle as a kid who was about the same age as you and I are. And so that they're kind of like a family, I feel like, the Shanahans, the Lynches, and the McCaffreys to some extent. So I feel like San Francisco is going to do right by him, and that was a version, them extending him doing that. And they're going to try to preserve him. So he could, like you're saying, maybe he plays beyond these 2 years too. Maybe the guy does amazing things with his body to try to preserve it. And I think they're going to want to try to keep him around and extend his career.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be awesome. If you live in Colorado, you're familiar with all those families, right? So it's just, Shanahan's, McCaffrey's, John Lynch while he was here was amazing. So we kind of pull for those guys too. I think good for him.
It's going to leave us for the next 3 years wondering, all right, do we care about his age yet? Do we care about Christian McCaffrey's age now? How about now when he's finally like 32 and still playing? I'll be a sucker for it always. I know Jesse's not giving up there.
Yep.
So along with those contract extensions, that's like some cold, hard facts. These are telling you something. Money, actions tell you stuff. Well, unfortunately, we're in training camp season. Not training camp season, OTA season. So words are also trying to tell us stuff. And honestly, I think the words mean very, very little some of the times. And well, this is one I'm a little mixed on. It's a personal, heartfelt situation here. My guy, Jameson Williams. It's JMO season. Everyone get out there. Don't tell yourself otherwise. It's way more fun just to dive into it. Don't think logically. Jameson Williams, a quote from a beat writer, Tim Twentyman, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, said in his observation of OTAs that he is noticing that Jameson Williams should be expected to have a larger role coming into this season, which makes sense with the departure of Josh Reynolds. But Steven, please get on my side with Jameson Williams. He's going to do good this year, right?
I don't. I want to help you out there, Andrew. He's, what was he, the 12th overall pick 2 years ago?
Something like that. I think right on.
Something high draft pick, but man, did he not do anything his first 2 seasons. He's got Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's we know is going to hog all the targets. The tight end there, he might even be behind Gibbs as far as the target share goes. So how excited do you really want me to get on this one? Maybe he has, a Gabe Davis season from a few years ago where he has some big plays. But as much as I do think Jared Goff's underrated, I don't know if he's so elite where he can have, a top 5 wide receiver, the number 1 tight end, the top 10 running back, and also have another wide receiver be super relevant. So I'm not really buying into the hype.
Unfortunately, I'm not really much either. I have him at a measly 18% target share in my projections. So it'll be enough that like there'll be 2 weeks where he has 2 good weeks in a row and I get really excited and get to put him on the waiver wire list. But it will be nothing more than that. And then I'll get really sad. Jesse, I'm gonna move us on to the next bit of news, and because the JMO one kind of just sounds like noise, we're gonna keep hearing it. But I don't know. This one actually got me kind of excited. Bijan Robinson, they asked him, the interviewer asked him, like, what do you think of this new offense? And his response was, this new look offense will be, quote, run first, like how they use Christian down there in San Francisco. Jesse, does that tickle your fancy on what Bijan thinks of his new role? Is this news or noise?
I guess San Francisco probably would be a lower elevation than Atlanta, probably.
Yeah, down there, I didn't really think.
No,
I'll
I
go
guess
pull up a map.
I think
Hold
that's
on.
right. I mean, it's like I think they're like sea
You know what?
level, basically.
I'm on it, guys. I'm on it.
Pull up a map. Thank you.
I just want to make sure that this down there is accurate. I don't need any quotes to be excited about Bijan. But before this came out or before anything else, I'm all in. I mean, I think that guy is unbelievable. So super, super high on him. Actually, the thing that got me excited is when you guys talked to me about Zach Robinson being the OC down there in Atlanta, because I think he's going to involve all of those weapons. And I think it was a travesty the way that everyone in that offense was being used under the previous regime. So yeah, no, I was excited before that quote. And he's going to take a step forward, I think, in year 2. I think this guy's going to be huge, but yeah, I'm into it.
And I'm going to agree with them. And you look into what San Francisco does, and it's that Shanahan McVay tree. You go look at Zach Robinson coming from McVay, like literally working with McVay last year.
Yep.
The Niners were the #1 team in rush rate last year at 45%. And the Rams were 8th at 41% in rush rate. These, high flying offenses, they run the dang football. Steven, update us. He said down there in San Francisco. Is that accurate?
You guys used good logic since, San Francisco is right there on the ocean and Atlanta's not quite as close. We're at 1,000 feet and 52 feet. 52 feet for San Francisco.
All right,
So good
but
job.
like
52.
I'm thinking like latitude on a map. He said down there. So who's more south?
Oh, I thought you were asking about altitude.
I was asking altitude.
Well, that's because you guys.
I live in Colorado. So
you know what?
We
live
say
in Colorado.
down there to everybody.
We work on altitude over here.
Yeah,
Andrew.
it's altitude. Yeah.
No,
I don't even
see. That's
dude.
just
I don't
wrong.
even know latitude. I've never looked up latitude anywhere.
Well, it's okay. So you know which one? So there's longitude and latitude, and I remember latitude's the one that goes this way.
Yeah.
Because latitude
I've seen a
is
globe.
latitude.
Yeah. I know what it is. I just don't know any numbers. They don't mean much to me.
Nope. San Francisco is definitely more northern than Atlanta. Get out of here, Bijan.
I would have guessed that in a heartbeat. I think San Francisco is more north latitude wise than Colorado, than Denver. I think it's further north than Denver.
It's middle. It's in the they're right next. News is updating in my ear. The producers are telling me it's pretty darn even, and I don't actually have latitude lines on this map.
Did you know that Reno, Las Vegas is further west than Los Angeles? Figure that one out.
I think we're thrilling people.
Reno, Las Vegas? Do you mean Reno, Nevada?
Or sorry, Reno, Nevada is further west than what did I say? Than Los Angeles.
You said Reno, Las Vegas. I'm like, what are we
Reno,
doing
Nevada.
Las Vegas is not a state yet, folks.
Yeah. Speaking of being uneducated, the Dallas Cowboys were all making news as people are wondering what's going to happen with this backfield. Like in Cowboys coach Mike McCarthy, tell me if this is news or noise, Steven. He's saying that the team will use 2 or 3 running backs, quote, whatever it takes.
Who's the third guy? There's a third guy?
Deuce Vaughn. Buy the hype, little guy.
Actually, keep an eye out for my boy Deuce Vaughn.
First of all, almost every team uses 2 to 3 running backs. And I'm not shocked by this at all because there's no single running back on the Cowboys roster. Now, I just hyped up Rico. It's like missing the name there for a second. A few weeks ago. But it could be anybody there. I do think it's going to be a bit of a committee. I think it is going to be a little bit of a headache. And I think I believe it. I think the third back's not going to get a ton of work, though. I think we see Deuce Vaughn moved in a few gadget plays here and there, but I don't see a big workload for him.
Yeah, I'm looking at underdog ADP at those Cowboys running backs right now, and Zeke's kind of fallen. He's gone down to the RB40, and Dowdle's right behind him now at RB43. So I think the fantasy community is in agreement with you, Steven. And speaking of agreeing with Steven, I agree that this idea that Steven had for a post is absolutely phenomenal. So I want to get into this as you get your stuff pulled up there, Steven. He had an idea. And again, I didn't see this, but it's the simplest thing that I think more people should have tuned into. And he found this correlation between QB fantasy points scored and wins. And Steven, believe it or not, I think the crux of what you're about to say is just good quarterbacks on good teams score fantasy points. Am I
I know
wrong?
we should have all been dressed as cavemen for this segment.
Well, we sounded like it earlier.
Yeah, we did. It was that. You remember that acronym KISS? Keep it simple, stupid. I feel like this fits right in line with that. Because I do think we're constantly trying to find these deep dive players that we think are going to be, shock everybody, and that does sometimes happen, and it does happen with bad teams. But I think the simplest thing is to look at what the sports books are saying. Look at what Vegas is saying. That's sharp. These are sharp people that are doing this as sharp computers that are simulating this stuff. And who are the good teams going to be? And what I found is when I looked at it, sorry, Andrew, I hit the wrong button on my little thing here. I found that I just went back the last 5 seasons, because especially over the last 5 seasons, we've just seen just this huge influx of quarterbacks that have come through that have really kind of changed the NFL landscape. But over the last 5 seasons, I found that 41 out of the 50 top 10 fantasy finishing quarterbacks over the last 5 years made the playoffs. So basically about 80%, a little over 80% of these quarterbacks made the playoffs. And it's not a shock because they're on good teams. Good teams have to score touchdowns to win. And touchdowns, especially at the quarterback position, is one of the key elements. Unless you are a cheat code, Konami code quarterback. But we've seen some of those quarterbacks burn us before. There was a lot of people wanting Desmond Ridder to be a thing last year, thinking,
and if I may interrupt, like the Konami code thing, it's not a cheat code anymore. Like, people know about it. You're paying now. Like Jaden Daniels, a rookie, would have been QB 20 years past. Now he's the QB 12 in underdog fantasy. So I think this is even better than that right now.
Yeah, and I think it points out that maybe Jaden Daniels has a little more risk than we're baking in to it. I keep hearing people talk about how, when you rush for 500 yards or 600 yards, you're guaranteed a top 12 finish. Well, I think that was the case when Tom Brady and Alex Smith and Peyton Manning were all quarterbacks, and Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers. But we've talked about this, that when is that going to start to swing a little bit? Because we have a lot of rushing quarterbacks now. There's at least like 10 in the NFL that I would consider like a Konami code quarterback. So maybe we need to look a little bit more into, the wins. Hit the wrong button again. So last season in 2023, every single top 10 quarterback made the fantasy playoff, or made the NFL playoffs. We had Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, and Baker Mayfield. And I think even more so, what I think this points to is the pocket quarterback, the quarterback that doesn't get you those easy rushing points. I think it's more important for those guys, like the Brock Purdys. Like, if we all of a sudden saw San Francisco lose a few players in the offseason or had some injuries or stuff like that, and we weren't seeing sportsbooks projecting them to win that many games, a player like Brock Purdy, I think, would scare the heck out of me, because he doesn't provide a lot on the ground. I think the same could be said for Jared Goff as well. Jared Goff last season, only 21 rushing yards, but he had the fourth most passing touchdowns. He had 30 passing touchdowns last year because he's got a good team, a team that Vegas likes a lot right now. I think they have the 4th highest Super Bowl odds. So it makes me think players like Jared Goff, I think he's going around QB 17 right now.
QB 16 right now in ADP. Yeah.
QB 16. Yeah. So I feel pretty good about him. It makes me feel a little bit better about Brock Purdy. Maybe the ceiling's not top 5 or something this year, but it makes me feel pretty good about the floor, because we know San Francisco is going to be good. And then, so what I did is I looked at the sportsbooks Vegas odds to see which teams have the highest odds. And, no surprise, 49ers, Chiefs right there at the top, the Ravens. What I was a little bit surprised about was the Bengals having the 5th highest odds. Does that surprise either of you two?
Yeah, but big time. Like I didn't think that they should be over. Well, I guess you just kind of look at the teams behind them. Like the Bills have fallen off. The Lions, I think I would probably have over them. It's a little bit shocking. What do you think, Jesse?
Yeah, I was surprised to see them that high. I guess they are returning the core of what they had way more than maybe the Bills, right? Have lost some players, but man, the Eagles and above the Eagles, above the Lions.
I
Yeah,
guess a
that's
lot of those teams are
pretty high.
close.
And my point to some of this is these Vegas is smart. They're smarter than we are. Like they analyze these rosters, they analyze the schedule, and they try to come up with these very accurate lines. So it makes me, from this list, the Bengals at 5, it makes me a little maybe more excited about Joe Burrow. Now I know he doesn't have like any kind of he's got a pretty high ADP as far as quarterbacks go this year, but it makes me feel a little bit better about where he's going. Like I just mentioned, Jared Goff with the Lions. I guess they had the 7th highest odds. I think I said that wrong. Cowboys are up there in the top 10. The Texans, not a surprise. A couple other ones though. The Jets at 12, the 12th highest Super Bowl odds, and then the Falcons at 13. These are 2 pocket, passers in Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins. That it makes me a little bit more interested in them because Kirk Cousins going as the QB 18. What's the risk in drafting a player like him at QB 18? Maybe the injury, but if they're expecting the Falcons to make the playoffs, he's going to be a big part of that, right? He's going to be throwing a lot of touchdowns if that's going to happen. So it makes me a little more interested in him. I also like the fact that they play in a ton of dome games. We saw he did very well in Minnesota. I mean, he almost broke records last year. I really wish we could have seen him finish out last season because he was threatening Peyton Manning numbers last year. And then the Jets.
If I may interject to add to that, Steven, like with the Falcons, the reason the Falcons are so highly favored and why we might be excited for Kirk Cousins is there's good players on that offense. Ipso facto transitive property geometry class. All right. If we're drafting a bunch of Falcons players like Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson high, who's running that offense? It's Mr. Kirk Cousins. So we should also be treating him appropriately. That's why his odds are so high. And I think a lot of that feeds into what you're saying.
You literally, you took the words out of my mouth. I was about to basically go on that same trajectory. Because I was also going to bring it up with Aaron Rodgers. We have what's Garrett Wilson's ADP is the wide receiver 8. So for this high on Garrett Wilson, why is Rodgers going all the way at QB 20? Like QB 20 is a healthy Rodgers. Now I will say 2 years ago when Christian Watson was a rookie and he had literally an entirely new wide receiver core, he was not good. He was bad. So was it the sign of like the fall off of Aaron Rodgers? I get that he's coming back from an injury, Achilles injury, but I will say, not a lot of history says he can't come back from this. I actually looked, and I think Dan Marino had one of it, like maybe his second best season returning from that injury back in 1993. He was a lot younger than Rodgers was at the time, but Jesse, you might back me up on this. The John Elway, the 32-year-old John Elway is like a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Like those guys seem so much older in their early and mid 30s than quarterbacks do nowadays. So we've seen Drew Brees play into his 40s. We saw Brett Favre play into his 40s, and we saw obviously Tom Brady do it. I think Aaron Rodgers going into his age 40 season, I think health-wise, I think he's going to be fine. And if obviously he's not the old Aaron Rodgers, but God, QB 20 with what they think the Jets are going to do, they think the Jets are going to be good. We're all in on Brees Hall. He's the RB2.
As long as Rodgers doesn't drop out to be the vice president candidate for RFK, like he should meet that expectation.
These are guys that I think I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Rodgers is this year's Brock Purdy, finishing top 8 among quarterbacks, and you're drafting him at pretty much the end of your draft. You're getting him in like the 12th round. So these are guys that kind of stood out to me. And then, on the other side, some of the worst teams, the Carolina Panthers, with the worst odds when I was looking, and not terribly surprised with what we saw last year. I mean, they should have had the number 1 pick this year. So it doesn't get me very excited about Bryce Young. I think we're optimistic he can turn things around, but he's not a guy I'm even looking to target. Like even if he is super late, because I just don't think there's much of a ceiling there, and I still think there is a floor. Patriots, not a big surprise, but then the 30th ranked team was the Commanders. So that does make me think a little bit about Jaden Daniels. Now, I think his floor, Andrew, you could probably agree with me, is probably fine because we know he's going to run a lot, but I feel like it does add another risk element of how many touchdowns are the Commanders going to score? Is he going to be like rookie year Justin Fields, where maybe he has a decent amount of rushing yards, but like no touchdowns?
I was going to say, people were waiting for the Justin Fields breakout, meaning he didn't do it yet. Like, he wasn't amazing until, like, even in the 2023, he was the QB 18. I know he missed a few games, but like, he wasn't that phenomenal. You still have to do something with your arm, which speaks to your point.
Yeah. Now, I do think I think what it points to, I think there's a lot more volatility with Jaden Daniels than maybe we're baking in. Like the fact that he's going as the QB 12, doesn't that feel pretty risky drafting him at QB 12? Because I don't know that his ceiling is a ton higher than that. Like, I don't know, like, what's he going to go up to, QB 7 or 8? Do either of you guys see him finishing much higher than that?
I talked about last week that this idea of just kind of anointing Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, I think, is a little bit dangerous. I like the weapons around Caleb Williams way more and the production that he had, but yeah, just assuming they're going to both be top 12 quarterbacks, like history is not really on their side of that as a rookie to have two rookies end up as QB1s. So yeah, I it's a little too volatile for me. And Jaden Daniels, if you followed him in college, you know that he hasn't quite figured out how to protect his body. And so the idea of him doing a full season, I think I would be somewhat shocked because, yeah, these guys are bigger, faster, and stronger. And he needs to learn to take care of his body. And so maybe they're working on that with him, but it feels pretty risky to me, Steven.
It's really going to come down to touchdowns, like you guys are saying. He's going to get the rushing yards. He just has to score touchdowns. Looking at Justin Fields' season in 2022, when Justin Fields was the QB7, he had 17 touchdowns through the air and 8 on the ground. So these rushing quarterbacks, Kyler was pretty similar. You got to get about 25 combined touchdowns, and obviously the ones on the ground are worth a little more in most leagues.
But I think look at those guys as rookies.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, you're talking about second, third years with those guys when you're looking at those numbers too, which is like, so there's a pretty big expectation there for a team that's, projecting to pick third in the draft next year. I will say, Steven, I have to ask you, like when I saw this graphic, I was like, the Broncos really, like, we're going to have the 4th pick next year. And do you like 5.5 wins? Like, don't you think the Broncos can win more than, like, the Broncos can win 6 games next year with Bo Nix? I don't know. That I was trying to figure out if I was just total homer on that or if I'm just like, come on, 5.5, we can do that.
I don't know, Jesse. Here's Pro Football Focus. Pro Football Focus actually said we have the worst roster in the NFL.
I saw that one. You shared that.
And I don't know that I could disagree. Like,
right.
I honestly think, you can't I don't feel like you can get a king's ransom for players anymore. I was going to say, as much as I like Surtain and would love to keep him, I'm like, what could we get for him? But, unfortunately, I think you get like a first back in today's NFL. Like, I don't think you get that much unless it's a quarterback. I mean, if I look at some of the teams ranked ahead of them, I think they could win as many games as like the Cardinals, or probably the Raiders and the Giants, like some of those teams. But I don't know. I look at them, I'm like, I could easily see us finishing below all those teams as well. And it is a rookie quarterback. You did point out, Jesse, that Bo Nix, he's had more college football experience than anybody. It's like the most experienced college. So he comes into the NFL ready to go. So I wouldn't be surprised if he hits the ground running. I don't know if the roster is like amazing to support, more than 5 or 6 wins though.
I tell you what really stands out to me there on that graphic. Sorry to cut you guys off. Is in the Broncos talk? Sorry, Broncos fans. Is the Vikings? We talk about the Justin Jefferson extension, and I really think Justin Jefferson could have 1,500 yards this year, 1,600 yards, like his normal amount of yards. But how many touchdowns do you think he's thrown?
Right.
How many of those have to go to JJ for him to pay off as top 5?
No, Andrew, me and Jacob were talking about this, and I moved him down in my rankings, and I'm really hovering around like the AJ Brown territory with him. And I think I have him one spot ahead of AJ Brown right now. But if we just compare the situations, yeah, I do think Justin Jefferson's the wide receiver, but is he light years better than AJ Brown? So I don't know. I think that JJ could be more volatile. I wouldn't feel great drafting him where he's going in drafts, to be honest. Like, I almost feel like Amon-Ra St. Brown feels safer to pick with. I don't think their upside's all that much different either.
Yeah, there's so many. Look, the list of teams that are on that lowest Super Bowl odds all have some wide receivers or some quarterbacks that have some significant fantasy impact. Cardinals, Marvin Harrison Jr., Bucks, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Seahawks, DK Metcalf, Raiders, Devontae Adams, Saints, my guy Chris Olave. And it's not to say all these guys are going to stink, but it's going to take some incredible variance to go in their favor. Or like a guy like DK Metcalf, I might be more inclined to believe in because he's the big end zone threat. I just think the touchdowns might work out wherever they go. He'll probably get them. But it's like you have to get 40% of your 50% of your team's passing touchdowns, and that's just hard to do. So it's just like it's scary what their floors are.
Well, and I think don't get too far away from Steven's point, though. We're really talking quarterbacks. Like, it's the quarterbacks, because you can have bad teams that have RBs and wide receivers finish higher.
Because you can, especially in PPR. I mean, Justin Jefferson could still end up with 120 catches on a bad team. So I haven't done a full dive on these, but I did look through, and quarterback was definitely the one that stands out here. Running back, it was almost a 50-50 with some of these guys, because you can get running back.
We've seen who are the quarterbacks in this like second tier here, right? All these on the lower side that you're kind of maybe avoiding then.
Like I said, I'm avoiding Panthers. I'm avoiding Bryce Young. One that I'm probably going to avoid Jaden Daniels. I'm not going to draft him at QB 12. The one that I'm on the fence on is Will Levis, because he's near the bottom, but he does present a little bit of a rushing floor. I think he has some rushing upside, and I do really like the weapons that he has in Tennessee. I like the running backs. I like the wide receivers. I like the tight end. And you're getting him at QB 24. So I do think we talked about him. Last year we talked about Jesse, help me out here. The Commanders quarterback that's now in Seattle.
Sam Howell.
Sam Howell. We talked about him being the next Daniel Jones, and he really was last year. He did prove to be. I mean, it was a bad team. Washington was a bad team,
right?
And he still ended up being good, which could be a signal that maybe Jaden Daniels will be fine. But you weren't drafting him at QB 12. You were drafting Sam Howell at the end of drafts. I think this year's Sam Howell and Daniel Jones could probably still be Will Levis, a guy on a bad team that can still run the football, that kind of has like a poor man's Josh Allen type playing style, but really good weapons around him. And he's a guy I'd feel fine drafting at QB 24.
Who's the OC? Is it a new OC in Tennessee?
It's going to be Brian Callahan as the offensive, or as the head coach running the offense. And then Dan Pitcher, if I'm not incorrect, came over as the QB coach from Cincinnati, along with Callahan to be the OC. But Callahan's the one calling the plays there.
I really like the weapons, but all those things have to mesh, right? And I do think that there is a plus for Jaden Daniels is having Kingsbury, because he's going to throw the ball all over the place and encourage his QB to run, because that's what he does. So that's why I am curious about that. But yeah,
I mean, if Traylon Burks, Jesse, is your kick returner in Tennessee, that's got to be a loaded roster, right?
I love how a bunch of my dynasty acquisitions in the offseason I'm getting all these posts about how they're special teamers now. Justin Fields,
that's not what you want to
Traylon
see.
Burks. No, this is not ideal. He's going to be a gunner. He's like, well, he's got to be a gunner if he wants to get on the field. I'm like, you don't get any fantasy points as a gunner, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the Titans. There's a tangent. I think they're going to run the heck out of the ball. I think Brian Callahan is, oh God, what's his dad's name? Bo? I know that sounds wrong for some reason. No, it's something else. But his dad is a renowned offensive line coach, like the most famously like best offensive line coach. And then they signed Tony Pollard and have Tyjae Spears. And then their first pick in the draft was a offensive lineman, when very well could have been like Roma Dunze. I think they're going to run the football a lot, but
They
Steven,
need to throw the ball. They got excellent wide receivers, and this kid that's supposed to be able to throw the ball. I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens in Tennessee. I do have. I wanted to tell one story about this, Steven, and I need your help with dates here,
Okay.
because Steven's talking about, he's just gone into this entire segment on picking good players from good teams, and I played in a redraft league with Steven years ago, and Steven. I've never seen anything quite like this, but how many New England Patriots did you have on your team? What year was it? And do you remember you had to literally, you just took an L one week? He was just like, I'm just going to take an L that week, because he owned the entire New England Patriots offense on one team. Do you
was
remember
it
the year?
2008?
No, because it was Dynasty, correct, Jesse, that we were playing at the time?
No, this was a redraft league, because you were like you knew that the that it was really going to hurt you on that bye week, right? And we were all
Yeah,
giving you
I've
a
done
hard
that.
time.
I like to push the envelope sometimes, and just load up on teams that are on good, players on good teams. And sometimes I've even chased teams that have not to the detriment of like my draft, but I've got it to where maybe I'm only hurting 1 or 2 weeks during the bye weeks, where I'm loaded every other week. And I do remember that season, I actually almost won my the week I wasn't supposed to. Like, I had like no running back to start, and I only scored like 70 points that week. But the guy I was playing, his team just bombed, like completely just shit the bed. And
Did you kick him out of the league? That is so deserving of getting kicked out of the league. Immediate
no,
ejection.
you know how sometimes you just have those weeks where it's like,
Uh-huh.
even though you have no control over these players, you're almost embarrassed. You're like, oh my God, this is the most pathetic thing ever. Like, you don't even, it's like, it's not like we go into a fantasy football office, but it's like, you don't even want to go into work the next day because you're so embarrassed by it. It was like, he had that kind of a performance, but because I had just literally every half my team on bye, I ended up losing. But yeah, I mean, it's worked out for me before. Like with the Patriots, once you realize they were really good and you just loaded up on like Julian Edelman and Gronk, and
I think he had, this is what I think it was. I think he had Tom Brady, LeGarrette Blount, Julian Edelman, and Rob Gronkowski in 2013, and that team went 12-4. Each one of those guys scored a lot of fantasy points, and it was just
year.
It was yeah, but it's just, I thought of that when I saw that post and laughed to myself, because Steven told me that, this is 10, 11, 12 years ago, whichever year it was. And I just remember he leaned into it, and I was like, dude, you're gonna, like, week 7, what are you gonna do? And he's like, I don't care, I'm gonna win every other week. And I was like, you're insane. And then it literally worked out. He was one of the better teams in the league. So this thing works. It's worked for Steven in the past, and I thought it was a great post, and just I loved the detail that he went into with that, and the thought process behind that. Especially with quarterbacks, I thought the most fascinating one to me was every single playoff quarterback, finished as a QB1. That part was interesting. That's what it was, right? Yeah.
Well, appreciate that. And, I think that was one of the reasons I was high on Dak Prescott going into last year, as I was like, man, sportsbooks love the Cowboys. Like, they still think they're going to finish as one of the top teams in the NFC. And we liked CeeDee Lamb. He was going, cute wide receiver 3 last year in drafts. So why do we not like Dak Prescott? I think we are probably going to, one of these guys, an Aaron Rodgers or, Kirk Cousins, somebody like that, Jared Goff, is probably going to continue to finish in the top 10, and they'll be probably a really good value.
Heck yeah, little cheat codes, and this is one that nobody else is talking about. It was almost like your indoor game was kind of your other calling card that, like, I hear you talk about that no one else was, and then all of a sudden it spread out there. So fantasy
I
guys
almost did ask you about it, but I went, it doesn't need to be asked, because it was so like on the nose, like, yeah, good teams score fantasy points.
Yeah, no, it just makes so much sense, but people need to think about it. And that was, great post, Steven. Move us into our final segment of the podcast, and it's just a great one. It's the off season. We got nothing else going on. We're really about to transition into out of the rookies or the hot stuff and more into the veterans or the new thing, and prepare yourself for that. It is always a cycle ongoing in Dynasty, and so we have some Dynasty buys that we think need to be taken advantage of, because I guarantee you some of these guys, I'm not sure about one of them. Some of these guys, whenever it comes August, is going to be a hot commodity. And Jesse, I just saw the one you put on there. I don't think this one's going up any higher, but please explain yourself. You have Elijah Moore as a Dynasty buy, wide receiver 86, it looks like, on Keep Trade Cut. So just explain that to me, please.
Hey, I go bargain bin shopping when you tell
I love
me Dynasty buys.
You're at Goodwill.
I'm going way down the list there. Which of those guys in that area of wide receiver still have the opportunity to be one of the 2 receivers on the field most of the time, or one of the 3 receivers on the field most of the time? He's right up there, and the guys that he's surrounded by are all, they may not even be on the field very much. So this is a very, very cheap Dynasty buy. He was number 12 in unrealized air yards in 2023, so he could have had a lot more fantasy points, and he was really hurt by the terrible quarterback play. Just especially to him, he had a 62.6% catchable pass rate, which was number 83 among wide receivers. So
he doesn't even run deep routes. That's some bad quarterback play.
Yeah. So if you're banking on Deshaun Watson having any kind of resurgence at all, it seems like that number would go up. And he's kind of being drafted, if you think about it, he's the 86th wide receiver based on the 83rd, 62.6% catchable pass rate. So it's like I see some market correction there where he could get open more. And this is a guy that's hard for me to let go of, because he was a Biletnikoff winning, amazing college wide receiver. And it just seems like at some point he's going to figure it out. Very, very dynamic player in college. And so, yeah, no, I honestly, Andrew, I wanted to do yours, and but you guys got your picks in first, so I had to scramble a little bit, because I think the next guy you're going to talk about is probably my favorite Dynasty buy out there right now.
Ooh, makes me feel kind of special and fancy there. But yeah, you are not wrong about where some of these other guys around him are value wise on Keep Trade Cut. Looking at that, the guys in front of him are like Devontae Walker, Jonathan Mingo, Treylon Burks, who was just deemed a special teams player.
Yeah, the gunner for the Titans.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, and according to Treylon Burks, his 40 time that he actually ended up running, I don't think he'd make a good gunner. So he's a little nervous about him.
It's gonna chasing guys down on this new kickoff. It's gonna be like the kicker is gonna outrun Treylon Burks. We're gonna see that on a play potentially. That is a tough look. Steven,
who's gonna have a better season, Elijah Moore or Brendan Rice? Elijah Moore or Brandon Cooks, Elijah Moore or Malik Washington in Miami. There's no risk. There's no risk at all right now. There's not really these big time players. Tez Walker in Baltimore. That's the value that you're getting back. So it's just, I don't know, extremely cheap.
Yeah,
Steven, any thoughts there?
No, I think that's a good one. Obviously, I don't think any of us are expecting huge numbers from him, but he was good his rookie season. Like Jesse said, he did have to deal with some horrible quarterback play. But yeah, when I look at it, they did sign Jerry Jeudy, or traded for him, I should say. So he might be fourth, on the depth chart if you go behind Njoku and Amari Cooper. But Cooper's contract's got to be coming up. I don't have it in front of me. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy could just be there for one season. We don't know how long he's going to be there. And then when you just bring up some of those names around him, like I'd rather have Elijah Moore than probably Rondale Moore or Brandon Cooks or some of these guys. Even if you look ahead of him, way ahead, there's, Rashad Bateman's quite a bit ahead of him. Is there much of a difference?
There's all sorts of posts about how, weren't you sharing something with us, Andrew, about how good Rashad Bateman's going to be this season?
He's on my dynasty team, and I'm still like, what? I don't like. Does someone want to trade for this guy? Like, why is this dude getting hyped up? Just put him on the block here. I'll do that right now.
Jesse, I think to wrap it up, I think Elijah Moore probably a good flex play, and I think he stood out a few times when Amari was injured this past season. So we know both Amari and Jerry Jeudy have a tendency to be dinged up from time to time. So I think he's dirt cheap right now. You get him as a throw-in. Like you could do a trade that's probably fair, right away, and then just try to get Elijah Moore as an add-on.
Yeah, Elijah Moore, man, why not? Sure, go for it. Like it's gonna cost you nothing. One running back who I think is costing way too little at this point in this pedigree of player, Najee Harris, the previous first round pick out of Alabama. Scout the helmet, somebody. He went to the Pittsburgh Steelers and was instantly like the RB1 in Dynasty, like almost everywhere. Like he was beloved when he first got drafted. And now all of a sudden, he is the RB26 as we stand here in 2024. And I just do not get it. He's going around guys like Ramondre Stevenson, Blake Corum, Alvin Kamara, Javonte Williams, Kendre Miller, some dudes who are either way at the end of their career or have literally done nothing yet in the NFL. And he's going behind them. Did you guys know that Najee Harris has rushed for 1,000 yards every single season he's been in the NFL? That's ridiculous.
That actually kind of surprised me when you put that up there. It didn't feel like he did that last year, did it?
No, but he was phenomenal, and he was still the lead back. And we've got this guy, Jalen Warren.
It's using it a little bit loosely.
I don't know
really
if I
good at
go
the
phenomenal.
He was really good at the end of last season. He went on a nice little hot streak. Probably helped some people win some leagues. Actually, probably not, because he was really bad in the beginning and no one made it to the championship with him. But he was good at the end of the year. And it's because they started running the ball a crap ton at the end of the year. And guess what? Everyone's favorite man, the mustached man who got fired after throwing a fit on the field, Arthur Smith, is there to be the new offensive coordinator after being on the Falcons, who ran it the fourth most last year. And when they're running the football, they're going to give it to Najee Harris or Jalen Warren, the smaller back. They're going to give it to Najee Harris. They can give it to both guys for all I care. They're going to run it 400 times. Both guys can run it 200 times. Like, it is going to be an exceptional amount of running, and he's proven to be a passing down back. I don't think there's going to be a lot of checkdowns, but there's no reason that we're not going to see Najee at some point. Let's say he leaves the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I think might be a good thing if they don't re-sign him after this year. All of a sudden, now he's out in the open market. And we've seen second contract guys like DeAndre Swift, like David Montgomery, like Josh Jacobs, like Devin Singletary, like Tony Pollard go and get a second contract after not being exceptional their entire tenure in their first spot, and all of a sudden be great. I think Najee Harris is really, really similar to Josh Jacobs, and I really think he could have a similar season. It's a plodding back who just is more of a volume guy than a big play guy, and people just find that incredibly boring. We'll put him in a new system, and all of a sudden, Najee Harris could find himself having a great year. He's going behind Jalen Warren, and I keep hearing this corollary of, oh, the guy right behind him was the more efficient running back, and so that guy needs to be the starting running back and not Najee Harris. This doesn't work. We've seen it. Friends, family, Tony Pollard just showed it to us last year, and Tony Pollard, I think, was a decent back, and I think the foot might have been holding back a little bit, but we can't just give that guy the workload. Believe it or not, he was efficient because he wasn't running the ball that much. So keep him in his role. Najee Harris, I think, cannot be worse than his RB26 that he's being taken in Dynasty. And then let's see where he lands next year. Let's say he lands somewhere with a good quarterback who's going to check it down. All of a sudden, he's skyrocketing in value.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I think the big thing with me, Andrew, is when you compare him to Jalen Warren, because I totally know what you're talking about. Because I just pulled up his efficiency stats because I know there's so many that will cling to these things that will show, true yards per carry, he's number 6, juke rate, he's number 1, and breakaway run rate, he's number 3. These are good things. They are good things. But at the end of the day, he's a 5'8", 200-pound running back, whereas Najee Harris, he is what NFL coaches want. Arthur Smith is going to want to use Najee Harris. I don't think he's super excited to use a ton of Jalen Warren. We saw it. You remember a few years ago, a good comparison might be Chase Edmonds. Everyone talked about the efficiency of Chase Edmonds. And remember, when he went to Miami? I'm trying to think which team he ended up with. Or maybe it was when he was just in Arizona and everyone was like, he is going to be this huge value. Yeah, it could have been more than 1 year.
It was.
He's the dead zone running back you want to target. And completely
Duke Johnson's
bombed.
another one that just popped in my head. Duke Johnson.
Yep, Duke Johnson back in the day. So I think Najee Harris, I think the worry I have with Najee, I think he could be really good this year in an Arthur Smith system. I still think he's a good back. I think there's a lot of people that don't think he's very good. I still think he's good. He can catch the ball. He's big. He's going to be used at the goal line. They're not using Jalen Warren. The only thing I worry is it kind of starts to feel like he could be the next Leonard Fournette as well, where
Leonard Fournette had a great back half of his career.
Yeah, but he had a couple seasons with Tom Brady. We talk about good teams, and quarterbacks that dump the ball off a lot. I think he got the Tom Brady boost. I'd be excited as Najee Harris in that role. And I will say, Russell Wilson was tossing the ball to the running backs a ton last year. So
it's true.
I do think I could see a resurgence here, but I think it could be similar to Leonard Fournette, where maybe we just get a little bump of like 2 years of good Najee Harris, but then it completely implodes. I could see that.
And I'm not even calling for an RB1 season. I'm just saying he's the RB26 in Dynasty. Yeah. Like, he just has to do something.
Yeah, and even the other players around him, there's so many. There's all these rookie wide receivers, that are pulling about the same amount of points on keep, trade, cut. Zamir White, we really think Zamir White's going to be that much better. He's way above him on keep, trade, cut. That's
crazy.
Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette. I don't have any.
I'd even go as far as I'd probably go as far as Blake Corum.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's fascinating to just see the receivers and the running backs kind of around that area for what he's worth. And he's going to be more effective than all these rookie, right now, those rookie point totals are just kind of set, right, based on where they went. And I think his total is really low. I don't know if this was just the timing of it, or if how it's the like big brother theory with my phone is listening to me, but it popped up on my phone literally today was all of Najee Harris's hurdling at Alabama. It was every time Najee Harris hurdled a player at How do they
find? By the way, the people that pull these highlight reels together, I got to know how they do it. Like, how did you find?
I'm telling you, go watch that highlight tape and then try and not be excited about Najee Harris. The guy should have won the Heisman Trophy that year. He took his team to a national championship. He was unbelievable in college. And name a worse offensive coordinator than who he played for the last 2 years.
Matt Canada, the Jesse doppelganger.
God, he's awful. Like, he was just awful. And I think his offensive line was bad and the usage was wrong. Like, it was really interesting just how poorly he was used. I think everybody there is going to look better. I'm not a huge Russell Wilson believer, but I don't think he has to be anything crazy. I think they can just hand it off to those two guys, kind of like Andrew's saying. So yeah, we'll see. But I think it's a great value play, Andrew, and I'm right along with you on this one.
Love it. Steven, finish us off. What guy are you viewing as a buy here in this lazy part of the off season?
Well, you guys kind of went more towards the bargain bin with a little bit older guys that have been in the league. They're going into their like fourth season or something. So I feel like I didn't pull as clever of one as you guys may have. But I went Rashee Rice, Kansas City Chiefs, because I hadn't looked a ton at his dynasty ADP since all this stuff had been going on. But I do remember I was like, because I have him in a dynasty league. I remember him being, I was like, he was like close to top 15. He was right there with Nico. I remember like in their rankings. So I went and looked, and he was as high as wide receiver 16 just a couple months ago, prior to this drag racing. And now he's the wide receiver 34. I was actually looking on keep trade cuts like trend line. He was even down to like wide receiver 50 at one point. So what that tells me is people are already starting to go, how it gets further away when it first happens and you see the video of the street racing, you're like, oh God, his career's over. It's all over. But
game over, man. Game over.
But it gets farther away. And then you start to go, that video, it looked like it was the other guy's fault. You start questioning the video and everything, and the clarity of the footage.
You gaslight yourself.
Yeah. You do. And no, I think that people are starting to go, this guy was actually really good. He's still tied to Patrick Mahomes. I think that if you wait too much longer, he's going to keep creeping up, and he might get to a point where you're not really getting a value. Whereas I think you're still getting a value right now if you can get him at wide receiver 34. Some other points I had is Casey has had a somewhat good history of taking troubled players and getting them on the right path. Even Travis Kelce. I don't know if you saw, you seen that show with the Kelce brothers that they have on Amazon? I've seen a few of those episodes.
No.
It's an NFL thing that they have on Amazon. I can't remember what it's called, but it's on the two Kelsey brothers, and they were talking about how Travis Kelsey got kicked off the Cincinnati team. He was a quarterback, Jesse. I think you would know better than I was, but he was the quarterback at Cincinnati, and he got kicked off for smoking weed and partying and drinking and like just kind of being an ass. And so he got kicked off the team, and he came back. His brother Jason basically pleaded with the coach, like, please get him back on the team, and they let him come back, but as a tight end. And so, and then he was really good, but he should have been a first-round draft pick, is what they said. He should have been the first. That was the same draft class as Zach Ertz, and Tyler Eifert was part of that draft class, and he should have gone ahead of those guys, but he went after those guys because there was off the field issues. There was a lot of GMs and scouts that said, "Oh, this guy's a head case. You don't want to draft this guy." So even Andy Reid, when he called Travis, he goes, "Put Jason on the phone," and he goes, "Jason, is this guy going to be is he going to actually be a good player, or is he just going to party and ruin it?" And he's like, "No, he's committed and everything." So my point is, Andy Reid was able to really work with Travis Kelsey on getting his priorities straight. We saw with Tyreek Hill. I mean, we thought Tyreek Hill was going to be out of the league a few times when he was in Kansas City with some of the off the field issues he had. I think we could see a similar situation with Rashee Rice, who was the number one wide receiver for the Chiefs down the stretch. Hollywood's still just on a 1-year contract, and I think he's got a lot of question marks himself. And Travis Kelsey's not going to be there forever. So he's tied to Patrick Mahomes for at least the next 3 years. And at wide receiver 34, some of the players that are going ahead of him on keep trade cut, which is what we've been referencing with a lot of this. Deebo Samuel, who's older, injured, rumors of him leaving, San Francisco every year. Jaden Reed, Keon Coleman, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, Christian Kirk, and Cooper Kupp. Now, a lot of those players are age related, but I would rather have him than all those guys who are going ahead of him. So I think you still got a little bit of a window to try to buy on him.
I mean, Andrew's got to be excited because Andrew is all about the diva. He wants if his receiver is getting in trouble, that just gets his juices flowing.
I just traded for him, actually. I traded him from in a league.
Do you remember what it was?
I went with a little risky trade. So I had 2 second-round picks in my redraft league, and it was my redraft league, my dynasty league, my home league, and it's 1 QB, and I traded the 204 and the 205 for Rashee Rice and Nick Chubb because I really needed a 4th running back. And so basically I ended up trading. I got Rashee Rice and Nick Chubb.
Did you say you needed a 4th of a running back?
I needed a 4th running. Well, it was a 4th of a running back. He's got
Nick
like one
Chubb
of his
fits
legs.
the bill.
Exactly. And so I got Rashee Rice and Nick Chubb for Xavier Legette and I think a running back or something Drake May, and Xavier Legette in a 1 QB league. I'll take it all day.
Yeah, I would too.
All day.
Yeah, because like I think we all like sorry, I'm blanking on like Ricky Purcell, who's going ahead of him, and Xavier. I think we like those guys. We've already seen it though with Rashee Rice.
Yeah,
and we know who he's already tied to with Patrick Mahomes. So I don't know. I think there's just as much risk with those guys just not being good, or the team, the system not working. Purcell playing behind all these other good players in San Francisco. Yeah, I'll take. Or Pearsall, sorry.
Yeah, what are you doing with that name?
You can't do it twice.
Pearsall.
Well, you didn't correct me.
What you were saying, Pearsall.
Because like once it's like, oh, it's an accident. Twice, no, Steven. You will not fool me twice.
Oh,
hey,
man.
This isn't the first time I've stumbled on a word or a name.
Caveman, ooga booga.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my guy.
Absolutely love it. Great dynasty buys because, like we said, it's a lazy time of the off season. Content is going to be this noise we talked about at the beginning. And so I think buys are always a good time to go through stuff. But that'll wrap up the show for us. An absolute great set. Got you through the QB cheat code that Steven's uncovering, some news, got you some dynasty buys. It doesn't get any better than that. And I will take us out. Follow the main page at Fantasy Guides or go to fantasyguides.com. Get you a draft guide or use code GUIDES. Get it for free by getting a deposit there on Underdog with a promo code and a deposit match. You can go find Jesse at Devi Rookie Watch on Instagram as well. And keep following us along as we go through this lovely off season. Say goodbye to the friends at home.
Peace.
Later.